Thank you much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So this answer that's okay. It's better to be prepared.
Alright, everyone.
I'll put this in the afterwards.
Alright, so we're gonna run through right now. Tanisha's ready. So she's gonna click through the slides as I walk through this, and then we'll give our piece of advice about how we're about. Then we're gonna run through.
Okay, I can too.
Did you grab that drum? It's going through the side room.
Alright, Tanisha, you good? Yeah. Alright, so at 10:20, everybody, Brian is gonna start playing prelude music. Thanks, Brian. And like a minute or two before 10:30, Marcia, go ahead and step into the pulpit. I'm gonna go ring the bell. You guys know what's gonna come in on the bell. Just close the doors on that 10:30. Marcia will do the opening welcome and introduce our call to worship.
Okay, so we skipped over gathered here, so we just need to know.
No, I'm not talking. Yeah, before that. So Marcia will open. She's opening welcome is Marcia, and then she'll introduce the call to worship.
Okay, that's not the flow that I have. So just making sure. I thought we did the musical call to worship, then you do the welcome and land acknowledgement.
Yeah, that is written that way.
Okay, so okay, musical call. So you do. I see. You just do a little hello, and then okay, that's fine. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just like it's so like people who are here for the first time. We don't just like we'll start singing.
No, I get it.
Like what's that?
I totally get it. I just didn't have it in my material. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. In fact, John, could you give me a pen? Oh, here.
There's one. Okay.
March to the rest. All right, so. Yeah. Okay, so brief welcome from Marcia before the music call to worship, and then I'm doing part 2 of Gathered Here. Okay. Okay, you can share your page. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Part 2 of Gathered Here. Make sure we
Don't worry about it. We've talked about it.
Okay, great.
It's
Okay, gotcha. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it's all right.
So then we'll, yeah. I'm sorry, we're just finished Gathered Here. Call to worship. Worship, yeah. And then Marcia will come back to the pulpit for our land acknowledgement, welcome, announcements, self-description, all that fun stuff. And then I'm going to stand right here just to make sure I'm on track with this.
Guys, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, we just got to run through this really quick. Marcia will introduce Barbara, ask everyone to follow along the order of the service, all that fun stuff, land acknowledgement, and then Marcia will step out of the pulpit, Barbara will step into the pulpit for the opening words.
Which at the end of what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say some stuff about the cup and the thing, and then I say, I invite Marcia to help lead our child's lighting this morning. And then you come up and do what you do.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what I'll say to get you up there.
Yeah, perfect.
And we'll try not to each fall off the thing.
Yeah, no worries. So in the chalice lighting, Marcia will invite Eric to come forward and light the chalice. Marcia will read the words, Eric's just lighting the chalice. Then Marcia will lead us in our spoken affirmation and introduce hymn number 131, Love and Practice. After the hymn, Marcia, you'll step out of the pulpit. Barbara, you'll step into the pulpit for the time for all ages.
Okay, that's, yeah.
Teacher's got all the story pictures, so she'll just follow you as you're reading it.
Wow. I'm wondering if it might help me if I came down and did it from here. Because then if I need to look up, I can and see it up there.
We have the physical book.
Yeah, I
Is that
do
what
too.
you mean?
Just to know.
She's gonna follow you.
Yeah.
You just read and she's gonna click as you talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes it more difficult because then you're turning backward and having to speak into the microphone. I think it'll be just fine.
Okay. All right.
She's a pro at this.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, of course.
Do I need to introduce
once you've
safety
introduced
first.
me once, you don't need to introduce me again.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay.
I just read a whole article about that.
Uh,
How many times do Unitarians say welcome, how are you, in their service?
Here's some.
Here's some.
I'm used to introducing you.
Right.
So that's fine.
So the quick thing you have to do, Marcia, after the story is you have to go back to the pulpit and lead us in the children's processional.
And it's Mal, they don't go with me, say Mal. So we-
Oh, I didn't even put Mel in there.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
Yeah,
You
it
don't have
just
to.
says, please join us.
So
That's perfect.
may I suggest that rather than, because of the nature of the having to step up, Marcia, why don't you come to this mic and
Sure.
it's to send the children on, you don't need to do that from the
As
pulpit.
long as it's on.
It's on
then they have
right
to
now,
turn
so we can test it.
Let's see, because you'll be up there. I'm doing the
Well,
story.
the other thing is I can just do it, and then you don't have to leave up there. I can do it. So would that be easier?
Yeah, what's the exact
Yes, and then while they're singing.
Please rise and bow your spirit and join in singing our children on the way.
Okay, so just drive me down.
Okay, I'm not gonna write down the words that you're telling
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
I'm gonna just do it, okay? You guys have to trust me. I'm a pro, okay?
Yeah.
So you want me to introduce, okay, so after the story,
Yeah. And then I go up.
and who are they going with?
They're just, we just sing them out.
Okay,
And then,
we'll sing the children.
that's actually nicer, because then while the music flows, it's
Yeah.
being kind of that nice transition, and it's not so.
Yeah, that's fine, it'll be great.
Okay, so Marcia will come back to the pulpit to do the offering.
Right, so I'll get down while we're singing that.
Yes. And then there'll be the gift of music.
I'm gonna add Aaron's name,
Oh, okay.
McFadden, Aaron McFadden, so Hannah Wally and Aaron McFadden.
Got the colorful thing today. That's great.
See, I don't have a pair of green pants, so I feel left out.
Yeah, yeah.
I should have worn my green shirt.
Coordinate, all right.
Okay.
So then, after the gift of music, Marcia, you'll come back in the pulpit for Joys and Sorrows. I'll go stand behind the Joys and Sorrows table, like the Joys and Sorrows. And then you will actually step out of the pulpit, Marcia, and you are done. Barbara's gonna lead us in the pastoral prayer and introduce Spirit of Life.
And we need to do that gently because leading into, I mean, do you do like a final candle?
Yes, I say it'd be like, something around, be like, one candle.
For the things that are tender.
Here, and then I'll.
Okay.
And if you want, Marcia, you can step down to your seat behind the pulpit and then move during Spirit of Life.
Yeah.
Right, and as I talked to Brian about what I will do, he may play some music underneath the prayer before we sing Spirit of Life. And it will lead seamlessly into singing Spirit of Life, and I will lead that. So, he and I'll maybe do a little practice.
right, I'm like 5 feet away.
Yeah, okay. But, so when you hear extinguish, okay, great,
All right,
thank you.
really good.
We should do mic check.
Yeah,
Let's
I
do mic checks, yeah, and then we'll let Hannah and Aaron reverse once they want. Yes? And I've mentioned it's been a long time.
Marcia, this is your,
They're gonna do a quick mic check.
and this is your file here, or that's, no, that's Catherine's file? All right, and, oh, I can hear that mic being on.
Yeah, this
Okay.
one's on, it's
Okay.
probably this one too, and I can turn them off to test each one,
Okay,
but
I mean, I tend to have a big voice, so sometimes it can sing a little more than it's does for other people.
I don't know that this is on here.
But this sounds all right, folks
You're
can,
sounding good.
okay, all right. Marcia, do you want to come up here and I'm wondering about this cord, if we could maybe, I'm just thinking if there's a way to,
Oh, the cord?
I agree. Let me see if there's some gaffer's tape. I can pull up so that it's not like right there like that.
yeah, it's mainly just that one spot there, if if we could
Can we
just,
tuck it
yeah,
under
that'd
the-
be great.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, thank you.
All right, I'm
Okay,
gonna
because I just don't want either one of us to trip.
Hello, can you hear me here?
Your-
I will when yeah. I'm mostly doing it for now. Hello. Hi. Hello, how is this? Welcome.
That's pretty good.
I have so many important things to say.
If I can hear it, it's good, because I frequently can't tell the difference between the background and the speaker.
And honestly, I hear a lot more than I normally do. Why is that?
I'm gonna check the pickup.
Oh.
Because I think there were changes, people fiddled with something. So
Oh.
I wanna check. Because
Yeah, it's different than normal. I don't usually kind of notice.
sound problem last week, I wasn't here, but, you know,
Oh.
I'm just gonna look it over.
It actually might be good in that sometimes I can't hear it, and it's like, is it on?
But if it's too bright,
Then it's reverberating.
yeah, it's just a little.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna, you want me on this side, you said? Okay.
I think, aren't you going out and leading around anyway, like right there?
Am I
Or-
going?
You're leading the round, part of the
Oh,
round.
right, yeah.
So it's, I mean, actually, it probably doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
I'll put my,
what I do need is a glass of water.
and it's normally right there. Did it go somewhere?
There was not one there when I got here.
Ah, okay. I will get that.
Thank you.
And, yeah.
This, I need this. Let's not throw that away.
No, this is right, yeah. So that's supposed to be the back right corner of the chair of our.
Why don't you guys go through your stuff now?
Miles and miles, the tongues of the ocean, tarmac and teenage tears. Life, it just happens, those roads and the lessons, always from things I feared when I was young. I cared for no one, I had my fun. But I was broken. So piece by piece, condition don't make it right or wrong. Now for the reverse of pain too you endured. You were the strongest one when you were young. Life was a struggle. No one would come to ease the troubles. So piece by piece, stone by stone, what's beneath is above as below. We'll build a home, we'll grow a garden when we get old. Will we stay open? You are my home. You are my garden when we get old. Will we stay open? Open, will we stay open? Will we stay open?
Thank you.
That's good placement too, so it's coming through nice.
Sounds good. Sweet.
Good job.
Yes, thank you.
I got a little ahead of myself.
Seems safe.
how long is the children's story?
You know, I honestly don't know. I mean, it's a picture book, so I don't think it's gonna be more than 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being willing to be a little creative today.
I mean, we're gonna see how it goes, and I'm gonna. I've done stuff like this before. It's just been a really long time, so I'm just gonna try to be as flexible as possible.
Yeah, well, that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
And you're gonna do the one because you were your mom. It'll be me.
Okay. Wow, that's really fast. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a little bit faster than we've done it before, but that's fine. I think it rolls right. It rolls nicely. Okay, this one with no accompaniment to speak of. Which is why the permission is there. Have you heard this one before? I was afraid of that.
Good morning. I was waiting. Welcome to Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. You can rise in body and or spirit in singing our call to worship, Gathered Here, hymn number 389 in our gray hymnal.
All right, guys, now this is our latest round in the series of, well, rounds. So we're going to have 3 parts. We're going to start over there with Brian's section. Hey, I've got volunteers today. So we're going to start with Brian's section. We're going to do it all once together so we know the melody. Then we're going to do it 3 times after that. We're going to break into 3 sections. Brian's section is going to lead us. The Reverend Barbara is going to lead this section, and I'm going to lead this section over here. We will sing the last part of that, number 4, Spirit Draw Near, over and over again until we're all on it at the end. So watch Brian, he will signal when our last round is, and good luck. So we're going to do it all together once, then we'll go into parts.
First one is all together.
First one is all together, yes.
That was lovely. Once again, welcome. So joyful to be in this vibrant community, and we're willing to try those things. Whoever you are and wherever you come from for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation, and all are welcome. My name is Marcia Kristen, and in the spirit of our KUF mission, and as we strive to be more inclusive, I offer you this self-description. I have medium blonde hair, I wear glasses, I have a nose piercing, and I am wearing what I would call a green shirt. I have just left the Committee on Shared Ministry after that term there, and right now I am on the Healthy Communications Committee and serve as chair. And actually, we are seeking nominations for team members who are willing to be trained to help the congregation practice faithful communication and creative conflict that's really based on mutuality and consent. So see me afterwards if you would like to nominate someone, and you can nominate yourself, and there's forms in the foyer. Now, our worship leader this morning is Reverend Dr. Barbara Wells Hove. She is Minister Emerita from Cedars UU on Bainbridge Island and happily retired in Bellingham with her husband, Jaco, who is here this morning. And we are so glad to welcome you both back to KUF this morning. If you are visiting this morning, welcome. If you are here in person, we would look forward to meeting you after the service during our coffee hour. And if you are attending online, please introduce yourself in the chat. And either way, we are very glad that you are here. I invite you to follow along in the order of service. There's lots of information in there. For those of you attending virtually, all the links for the service, including the order of service, are on our website and in this morning's worship service email. And if you are here in the sanctuary this morning, please silence all of your electronic devices that you do not need to use to hear. The announcements are also available on our website, which is www.kuuf.org. And they're also in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. And we just want to let you know that the new to UU course meeting will be in the Elmore room, which is off here after the service. Maybe we can take a breath together and settle after that. I invite you into the land acknowledgement, and I will read that. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as was promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. And now, Reverend Dr. Barbara Wells ten Hove will share our opening words.
It's a miracle. I am tall. You'll have to forgive Marcia and me as we go up and down this very large step, but it allows you to see us, which in my book is a good thing. So hello, everyone. I am indeed the Reverend Dr. Barbara Wells ten Hove, but you can call me Barbara most of the time. And it's so great for me to be back here in this beautiful sanctuary. Oh my gosh, I remember coming here in the very early days, seeing the incredible gift that this building has brought to you, and just seeing all these wonderful faces. Some of you I've known for years, and some of you I've never met. It's just a joy, though, for us, Jaco and me, to be back here at this place at this time. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And I really want to thank Catherine and Marcia and Brian and everybody else for their support as we move into worship this morning. Well, in Unitarian Universalist congregations around the globe, when we gather and worship, we light a flame inside a chalice, which is the symbol of our unique faith. Now, we've done this for decades, but I think we don't always take the time to remind ourselves of its meaning. The chalice, we sometimes forget this, is actually a cup. It's a cup. And cups are a potent symbol of community, because in culture after culture, the act of sharing a drink together reminds us that all are welcome at our table. Our chalice is open for everyone, not just the special or the saved. Now, into that chalice cup, when we gather as we do this morning, we don't put wine or water, but fire, the symbol of transformation. And by doing so, we remind ourselves that it is within the chalice of community that we find the strength to become who we are truly meant to be, which I believe is the purpose of the religious community. And so I invite Marcia to help lead our chalice lighting this morning.
Thank you. I want to welcome Eric Harold to come up and light our chalice. And join me now in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as I read our chalice lighting words, which come from our religious compatriots in Oberlin, Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, faith in ourselves, and to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather round this light of hope as we share this time together. And now join me in the spoken affirmation, and the words will appear on the screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Our next hymn is number 131, Love Will Guide Us. And the tune for this hymn was named Olympia after Olympia Brown, the first woman to be fully ordained in the United States in the Universalist Church. So you can rise in body and or spirit to join in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
So I have a wonderful story for you that I think you will find fun, since I'm going to be exploring the story of Jonah in today's service. We're going to have a little story, and this is called Oh No, Jonah by Tilda Balsley, with illustrations by Jaco. God spoke to Jonah long ago. That Nineveh is a horror show. Go preach to them and let them know their wicked ways have got to go. Preach, said Jonah. That's not fun. Nagging, everyone. Who will thank me when I'm done? I'll tell you who. Not even one. So that's a job I think I'll skip. I'll hide from God. I'll take a trip to Tarshish on this sailing ship. All aboard now, let her rip. Oh no, Jonah. As the ship sailed off from shore, the wind whipped up a fearful roar, and drenching rain began to pour. There'd never been such waves before. Sailors sprawled across the floor. They begged their gods, no more, no more. But Jonah heard no thunderclap. He'd gone below to take a nap. The sailors woke him up and said, this is no time to stay in bed. You should be praying hard instead. Oh no, Jonah. Now let's draw straws, and that will show whose fault this is. We need to know. The sailors held their breath, then saw that Jonah drew the shortest straw. He raised his voice above the sound of angry ocean all around. The God who made both earth and sea has sent the storm because of me. I'm a jinx you can't afford, so please just throw me overboard, and peaceful seas will be restored. The sailors gasped with one accord. The awful truth can't be ignored. Let's act now before we crash. 1, 2, 3, heave ho, now splash. Oh no, Jonah! Immediately the weather cleared, but things were worse than Jonah feared. I wish I hadn't volunteered. A giant fish swam to his side and stared at him all goggle-eyed, its mouth humongous, open wide, and chomp! He found himself inside. Oh no, Jonah! 3 days and nights poor Jonah cried. Oh, woe is me, I wish I'd died. Look at this half-eaten stuff. Life inside a fish is rough. He prayed, all right, God, fair enough. You saved me from the sea, it's true. Please save me from this big fish too. Then what you want is what I'll do. God was quick to grant his prayer and whisper to the fish, take care to spit the man out over there. Then God sent Jonah on his way, and this time Jonah said, okay. He went to Nineveh that day. He preached to them, like it or not, 40 days is all you've got, for God has doomed this wretched spot. The poor, the rich, all ages heard. The hearts of Nineveh were stirred. The king said, let us pray and fast and turn from wickedness at last. If we repent and pray for pity, God may show mercy on our city. So God spared every Ninevite. But Jonah said, this isn't right. He yelled at God, you're way too soft. I knew you'd let those sinners off. God wouldn't even hear him out. What are you so mad about? And Jonah went away to pout. The sun beat down. He felt betrayed. Oh, for a sip of lemonade. God grew a vine for healing shade. A slight breeze blew. It gently swayed, and Jonah felt his anger fade. But soon the plant had holes all through it. God had sent a worm to chew it. By morning, sweaty Jonah knew it. He shouted at the God who grew it, my plant is gone. How could you do it? Oh, no, Jonah. God said, how dare you rave and rant? You didn't even grow the plant. The Ninevites have changed their ways, and well before the 40 days. I had, therefore, a change of heart for Nineveh, a brand new start. Why should that make you fall apart? The story ends right there and then. A big fish tale from way back when, still telling us how we should live and showing us how to forgive. Thus ends the story of Jonah. And it's now time for our lovely young people to be sung away with a beautiful song. So I invite you now to follow in your normal process as you sing this song together.
So as part of our mission that inspires us to act on our beliefs, we share our weekly offering with our local nonprofit agency, providing services within our larger community. And our charitable giving recipient for the month of September is Kitsap Mental Health Services. And KMHS provides mental health services to more than 6,500 people annually, and I'm sure is in great need. And in a moment, our ushers will move among us with a basket to collect the offering. And just so you know how it goes, donations placed in the basket will go to Kitsap Mental Health Services. If you would like your offering to be used for KUUF, please use the envelope that came in the order of service. And it was provided to you as you came in. For those of us joining us online, you may go to our website, kuuf.org, and select the Giving tab for the PayPal and the mailing information. If this is your first time to KUUF, feel free to let the basket pass you by. Your presence is your gift. Now let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain this community, which is sacred to so many of us. And let us enjoy a wonderful gift of music from Hannah Wilding and Aaron McFadden.
Miles and miles, the tongues of the ocean, tarmac and teenage tears. Life, it just happens, those roads and the lessons, always from things I feared when I was young. I cared for no one, I had my fun, but I was broken. So piece by piece, stone by stone, what's beneath is above as below. Where is my home? Where is my garden when I'm alone? I am surrounded. Love with condition, a family tradition, don't make it right or wrong. Now for the reverse of pain to you endured, you were the strongest one when you were young. Life was a struggle, no one would come to ease the troubles. So piece by piece, stone by stone, what's beneath is above as below. We'll build a home
Thank you so much. Now is the time for our joys and sorrows, and when shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows are lessened. We have a number today. So this first one is from Megan Shepard. She says, Harper, my curly little redhead, has been at Marybridge ER since Saturday morning. She had severe leg pain and her white blood cell count is high. She's scared, but being so brave. Please keep her in your thoughts. Definitely send lots of love to Harper and to Megan and the whole Shepherd family. Let's see, and from Karen Leader Scott, has a joy that last Sunday the Children's RE created food and hygiene bags for the unsheltered that are served by Community Rejuvenation Center. And the center received these bags with great joy and thankfulness. So thank you to all who contributed to this project. Such a joy. And then we have a joy from Evie Haver, who's a student here at KUF. And she writes, being able to spend this summer with my dad and stepmom and my little sister Lucy, of course, who all introduced me to KUF this summer. She says, I'm leaving, so her sorrow is that I'm leaving here for a little while to go to school in Idaho, and I'll miss this community of people until we meet again soon. She said, I'd like to give thanks to Melinda Hughes for leading this kids program. I will miss you. That brings tears to my eyes. So sweet to know you contributed as a community. And then the last joy is from Catherine, that her brother Thomas and Kana were married this last Saturday. Much celebration for that. And then we light one last candle for those joys and sorrows that are still too tender to share.
Gracious One, whom we call by many names, on this day when summer is fading, but fall is not quite yet here, we stand on the precipice, waiting to see what will come, even as we remember and have gratitude for what has gone before. On this day in particular, we acknowledge our children and our young people who lead us through their courage in the hospital, through their gratitude for this community, for the ways they share with others. They are our teachers, and we give thanks for them. And we give thanks for each and every one of us who is here today, offering ourselves to the world. And we acknowledge, too, that there are sorrows unexpressed, unsaid, but that lie among us here. May we help each other and care for one another through the difficult times as well as the joy. And so we invite the Spirit of life to join us in this place and at this time. And so we sing together this prayer written by Carolyn McDade, Spirit of life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Amen, and blessed be. So I brought a lovely responsive reading to share with you, which you should see the words on your screen. This was written by Philip Hewitt, whom some of you who've been around a while might remember. Philip was the minister of our church in Vancouver, British Columbia for a long time, and I was privileged to get to know him well. So you have the italicized words, and I will lead the other ones. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness. Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all. We cherish our oneness with those around us and the countless generations that have gone before us. We would hold fast to all the good we inherit, even as we would leave behind the outworn and the false. Let us labor in hope for the dawning of a new day without hatred, violence, and injustice. Let us nurture the growth in our own lives of the love that has shone in the lives of the greatest of men and women, the rays of whose lamps still illumine our way. In this spirit we gather. In this spirit we pray. So let us just take a moment in quiet reflection together. to the very bad people, there's the mic, who lived there. Do I need to start over, or did you? Okay, all right. We're talking about Jonah. Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. That is made very clear. Instead, he hops on a boat heading in the exact opposite direction. He's going to run away instead of doing what God has told him he must do. But he's not very successful. In fact, the story makes it clear that running away isn't going to get him anywhere except into the belly of that great big fish. Now, most of us, if we were asked about Jonah, would talk about that big fish and its belly. It's such an evocative image, isn't it? I mean, there he is on a boat destined to sink if the sailors on board don't get rid of the baggage that's truly weighing them down. They learn pretty quickly that it's not the barrels of supplies that they have on board that are causing the trouble. It's the guy sleeping down in the bottom of the boat who's the problem. And what is so wonderful about this story, if you go and read it in the Bible, it has all of these very great specifics. He's taking a nap down in the bottom of the boat. That's in the Bible. Well, that guy sleeping down there is the problem. He knows it. When they wake him up, he is resigned. Now, it's not as clear in the version that I read, the children's version of that story, but in the Bible, it's obvious that the sailors don't really want to throw Jonah overboard. After Jonah tells them that he's responsible, they don't toss him off the boat right away. They keep rowing harder and harder to reach shore. However, when they discover that they're not going to make it, they ask God's forgiveness before they dump Jonah into the sea. Now, Jonah then ends up in that big fish, forced to sit with himself for 3 miserable days. While inside the belly, he realizes that he can't run away from what he's truly called to do. And so he sends out a prayer, promising God that he will fulfill his vow. Shortly thereafter, he is literally thrown up onto the land, and the Bible uses a word that means vomit. So he's vomited onto the land, and then he sets off to go tell those nasty Ninevites that it's time for them to stop, as the pop song so beautifully puts it, change their evil ways. The city of Nineveh in ancient times was perhaps the largest city in the world. Now, Jonah, a Jew, believed it was his job to convert all of its inhabitants to his belief in God, his particular version of God. And so he went to tell them that if they didn't convert, God would destroy them all in 40 days. And there's a lot of this sort of numerology that you see in the story of the 3 days in the belly, the 40 days to be destroyed. Now, that's a good reminder that this is an ancient story. It's a myth. Now, it may have a little basis in fact, for it's true that someone named Jonah likely existed, and certainly the city of Nineveh did. But let us not look at this story that must only relate to that time and those people. For it doesn't really matter if Jonah was trying to convert them from paganism to Judaism or vice versa. What matters is that Jonah was doing what God had called him to do, and that the Ninevites represent people who desperately needed to behave in new and different ways. Now remember, Jonah was a very reluctant prophet. Not only did he ignore God at first, when he actually went to Nineveh and began to preach, he really didn't want his message to be heard. That it was something of a mythical miracle. Jonah had his mouth full of hellfire, damnation. He truly wanted God to rain terror down on those nasty Ninevites. So when the Ninevites actually paid attention to Jonah and recognized that they could turn away from their evil ways towards something better, Jonah was not the least bit happy. He had it in his mind that he would be witness to the downfall of the mighty city. And when instead God spared everybody, Jonah left the city and went out into the lands beyond to pout. Now let me read to you how this is described in the Jerusalem Bible. Jonah was very indignant at God. He fell into a rage. He prayed to God and said, "God, is not this just what I said would happen when I was still at home? That was why I went and fled Tarshish. I knew that you were a God of tenderness and compassion, slow to anger, rich in graciousness, relenting from evil. So now, God, please take away my life, for I might as well be dead as to go on living." I mean, such a pout. He's so mad because he thinks God should have destroyed those people, just like God put him into a ship that nearly sank, threw him into the sea, had a big fish swallow him up. I mean, look at it from Jonah's perspective. He had all these horrible things happen to him. Why shouldn't they happen to other people? Even though he knows and expresses so beautifully that God is slow to anger, rich in graciousness, and relenting from evil, he doesn't like that about God. And so he goes out and sits under the tree that God very graciously has provided him, and he pouts. Now, I want to explore a little bit about what the story of Jonah has to teach us sitting here today. Now, I know for me, I'm a homebred UU, so the ancient Bible stories can sometimes seem kind of weird, insignificant, maybe even meaningless. Why should we care that thousands of years ago some minor prophet got swallowed up by a fish and converted a whole city? Well, honestly, I don't care too much about that. What I think is more important for us to reflect on is this. As humans, we share a remarkably common tendency with Jonah. For this story reminds us of how tempting it is to want those people that we think really deserve it to suffer. So you're with me now. Okay, good. So let's sit for a moment under Jonah's tree and see what we might have to learn. And to be clear, I'll be talking about God today. So deep breaths, everyone, deep breaths. Okay, which one? Good question. The old one, at least one of the, not the real old one, the kind of medium old one. Anyway, I love Unitarian Universalists. You're my people. Well, another story is in order, and this one is a true one. Some years ago, I volunteered at Washington State Reformatory in Monroe. And I worked with a group of guys who were lifers, which means they would have had to have done something pretty terrible to end up getting a life sentence. And in our group, we heard a lot of stories about suffering and guilt, but one in particular really stood out for me. Tony seemed like a gentle and kind person, and he was certainly a leader. And over the course of a year or so, the group that I was co-leading at the prison heard bits and pieces of his story, how he'd been raised in the ghetto, abused and mistreated, and how gang life gave him a place to feel powerful and strong. Now, he never let us feel sorry for him, for he was clear and honest about his guilt. He had, we discovered, killed 2 people, execution style, in service to the gang. Now, not surprisingly, the families of those he killed wanted vengeance. They were very eager for him to get the death penalty and were certain he would, given the circumstances. But somehow the judge saw something in Tony that went deeper than his crimes. He saw that rare quality, remorse. And when asked by Tony and his family to spare him from the death sentence, the judge did. Well, you can imagine the anger and frustration of his victims' families. They longed for his death. They knew he deserved to die for his crimes. And here was a judge sparing him. Now, I only knew Tony, not the families of his victims. Yet I can understand how angry they might have been under the circumstances. Tony was a killer, and when he was sentenced for his crimes, there was no way his victims' families could understand that Tony would do what the Ninevites did in the mythical story, truly repent for his awful deeds. Now, fast forward many years later to our group at Washington State Reformatory. Tony comes to us with tears in his eyes and a powerful story to tell. I have an opportunity, he said, to make amends to the mother of one of the guys I killed. And I have never forgotten, that is exactly what he said. It seared itself in my mind. She is ready to meet with me, he said, and I am ready to ask for forgiveness. Please pray for me. Whew. We sat in silence, took turns praying for him and for her. Now, their encounter went well. Tony spoke his truth and listened to hers. Healing happened. Love came to life in their hearts. Now, for years, and with good reason, this mother sat under Jonah's tree, wishing that God would punish Tony as he so richly deserved. But love called to her, and she found herself able to forgive the unforgivable. When those two met in the chaplain's office at the prison, a true miracle happened. Remorse was expressed, and forgiveness asked for and offered and received, and two lives moved forward, leaving hatred behind. I tell you this story because most of the reasons that we sit under Jonah's tree are not nearly as significant. Most of the times that we sit under that tree are because some person or group we don't approve of didn't get their comeuppance in the way we might have liked. For example, I know I am inclined to get really pissy at right-wing conservatives and followers of one of the worst presidents ever to be elected. Now, they're just so awful, right? I mean, don't they deserve our scorn, even our hatred? No. Sometimes these folks behave in ways that deserve our praise. They give to the food bank. They clean up rivers and streams. They offer help to the homeless. They help their neighbors just like we do. But even if they don't, it's still not our job to hate them or wish that they would go away. And yet I know that I do, at least sometimes. Though I don't think we would ever wish that they be blasted off the face of the earth, as Jonah wished would happen to the city of Nineveh, it would be nice if occasionally these folks that annoy us might get at least a small smack upside the head once in a while, right? Don't tell me you haven't felt that way. It's a very common human experience. It's one of the reasons why the Jonah story has lasted for so long. For it's not only a whale of a tale, it's also an example of the very human tendency to wish punishment upon others, whether they deserve it or not. Which leads me, inevitably, to a powerful theology and one part of our religious tradition, Universalism. What actually got me thinking about Jonah was a sermon that my husband Jaco and I heard when we were in Northern Ireland almost exactly a decade ago. A young student of ministry from Belfast preached on Jonah to a tiny group in a small church in that troubled land. We were there on the Sunday after the Boston Marathon bombing, and our hearts were full of the sadness that comes when hatred rears its ugly head. That young minister spoke to us of God's love as it is portrayed in Jonah, God's universalist love. For in this story, God doesn't do what Jehovah often does in so many other stories from the ancient Hebrew scriptures. He doesn't rain death and destruction on the unbelievers. Instead, God spares the people of Nineveh, showing mercy and love toward them. That's universalism. As Jaco and I sat in that cold sanctuary in Northern Ireland, I couldn't help but think of how desperately our world needs to hear stories that speak not of God's hatred, which we hear so often from fundamentalists, but of God's love. How crucial it is for humans across the globe to realize that there are stories that teach that God is more than just angry and jealous. There are stories that teach that God is loving and kind and generous, like the story in Jonah. There are stories that teach us about the universal love that undergirds the universe, a love that is very hard to live out in our own lives. We're far too much like Jonah than we're inclined to admit. We can't always relish the Spirit's invitation to love our neighbors as ourselves. Just like most people everywhere, we get caught up in separation and hatred until we are called in a different direction. And that different direction is, I believe, universalism. And it's a difficult theology to live out. Loving and forgiving sounds easy, but it's the hardest thing we can do. There is a reason that universalism is considered a really big heresy, and not just in the past. It truly bothers people to think that those who deserve it won't be punished here and now and when they die. Have any of you seen the wonderful movie called Come Sunday? Is anyone? I see a few heads shaking. It tells the story of Carlton Pearson, the African-American bishop and a protege of Oral Roberts, who became convinced, despite years of preaching hellfire and damnation, that God would not condemn non-believers to hell. He was converted to universalism, and that conversion was seen as the ultimate heresy to the folks in his church. He lost a lot because he came to believe in God's ultimate love. But he gained a lot too. It changed his life for the better, and now he preaches love, not hate. Learning to let go of a desire for vengeance is a powerfully courageous thing to do. True universalism is one of the hardest theologies to actually live out. It's so much easier to sit with Jonah under his tree and pout than it is to get up, go back into the city, and make friends with those we thought we should hate. Watching the story of Bishop Carlton and his conversion was inspiring. Hearing the tale of forgiveness at the prison touched me deeply. And listening to a young man from Belfast preach Universalist theology in Northern Ireland was profound. If the Irish can find ways to forgive each other, then it must be possible for the rest of the world to do so. We live in a world where hate continues to be very strong. The cycle of violence and vengeance is seen everywhere, from Ukraine to our own cities. The political climate right now is so toxic that people are exhausted. It's why it's so important that we find the courage to preach the good news of universalism to everyone who will listen. And sometimes it makes sense to use old stories like the tale of Jonah to do so, as speaking in the language of our Christian friends can help build bridges. It's helpful to remember that in every religion and culture, there are stories like Jonah, stories where the Holy One is full of compassion and love, not anger and hate. Stories of people who change for the good, even when it seems unlikely that they ever could. Now, I know that it's challenging to live a universalist theology, but if we won't, who will? I mean, our kind of faith is not an easy one. People say, oh, you're a Unitarian Universalist. You can believe anything you want. No! That is not true. Believing in Universalist love is about the hardest thing anyone can do. Try it on for a change, and live with it for a while. Woo, it's hard. Our kind of faith is not an easy one, friends. It's a hard one, and it calls us to live out of a place of great love. Can we make the commitment that such a faith calls us to make? I think we must. Yes. Well, in closing, I like to think that the great love that some call God is present even when things look bleak. And I'm grateful to the ways that people all over the world manage to care for one another and reach across boundaries, living out the Universalist love present in the Jonah story, and I hope in our hearts every day. Yes, loving at this level is tough, but I challenge us to become the gold medal winners of love, taking part in a contest where everybody wins. Everybody wins because love wins. Love wins every time. And what wondrous love is this that we are called to? This beautiful song will remind us. This is a wonderful song that comes out of the Southern Harmony, my family tradition, going back a long way. It's a beautiful song. So I invite you to rise, embody your spirit as we sing What Wondrous Love. If you want the music, it's hymn number 18.
And if you're reading from the book, ignore the second page on number 18. That's just the harmony section.
Trusting that love will guide us, may we commit ourselves to step out from under Jonah's tree, go into the city, and share the good news that love is always stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger than death. Wondrous love indeed, my friends. Wondrous love. Wondrous universalist love indeed. As we extinguish our chalice, let us carry the flame of love in our hearts, sharing it with all we meet, wherever we may go. Amen, and blessed be.